Luke Taylor here, Full Court Press podcast with my man in the fancy Full Court Press podcast hoodie, Sammy D. Hey, we've got a giveaway on Instagram popping today.
Yeah, we do, baby. I'm excited for that.
I know, so am I. So am I.
Yeah,
we're
gonna get some swag out there. 2024. There's gonna be some Full Court Press swag floating around the country.
Yeah, so we got that sweatshirt and then also some custom Nike Air Force Ones. So you got to check out our Instagram account, which is what, Full Court Press B-ball, I think. What is our? I don't even know it. Should probably look that up, huh?
Yeah, should ask our intern that we don't have.
Yeah, that's called me. It's Full Court Press B-ball. I was right. It was right, and we got another 5-star review. We're up to 7. So whoever did that, thank you so much. It's most appreciated.
I love our reviews. Talk about this giveaway a little bit.
The giveaway. You got to follow us, and you got to follow us, Gifted Soul, and we're going to give away a pair of your favorite Air Force Ones. So you get to actually customize them. So, like, if you're a fan of, let's say, Florida or UNLV, which we got the photo of, or Kansas, He does a great job. We partnered through Instagram, great guy, and trying to help each other. So do that, and then you can also customize your Full Court Press podcast sweatshirt. So if you're a Florida State fan, you can get a maroon top like I'm wearing. I'm sorry, it's my old podcast, but whatever. And then you could have the gold and white Full Court Press. So that's going to be really great. And you get some bonuses by doing the by rating the podcast, reviewing it, and following us. So we'll have all that. But let's talk about this. So we're going to have a 3-part episode. This is part 1. We're going to talk about 10 conferences. So conference season is about to begin for some, like the Missouri Valley. It's already started. They played 2 games in November, which is weird, and some actually played in December. So first conference we're going to talk about is American East Conference. So a couple teams that I like. I like New Hampshire. But then they then I think they lost Iowa State by 15. The team that's gotten beat up but is still 9-5 is Vermont.
You see Vermont in the tournament every year, but it's like I feel like for like 4 weeks in a row we weren't dogging on them, but like we were like, oh, they just lost again, right? Like, so
they play a good schedule. They play.
They have one of the. I mean, they have. Looking at who's in the American East, they have the hardest schedule, at least non-conference first half of the season, and they really tested themselves. And I mean, they've got a 5-1 home record right now, which I mean, that's what you want going into conference. Yeah. So,
and John Becker obviously knows what he's doing with the Catamounts, which is a Cougar.
Ooh. Yeah.
We
learned that on you learned that, and then you shared it with everybody. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like TJ Long, I like Shamir Bogues, and I like Matt Veredo. TJ Long leads the team with 13.2 points per game, and they're just good. I mean, they lost to Charleston, they beat Charleston, they beat St. Louis, they lost to Liberty, they just lost to Miami of Ohio, who I think Miami, Ohio, in about a year or two is going to be really, really strong. We've had Coach Steele on the podcast. The other team I really like is the UMass Lowell Riverhawks. I love
Coach Pat Duquette.
Yeah. They beat Georgia Tech and almost beat Arizona State, lost by 2. So they really haven't played anyone else except for losing to UMass by 14 at the beginning of December. Ayenda Hakeem. My guy, 17 points per game.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
who you going with?
Showing some senior class. Yeah, I'm going Vermont, that conference. So
I really want to go with UMass Lowell, but Vermont obviously knows what they're doing. So I'm going to have to go with Vermont too. Okay. So the next conference we're going to talk is the American Athletic Conference. It's a 2-team race. They both play each other on February 25th, which is a Sunday, and then last game of the season at FAU. Saturday, March 9th. It's Florida Atlantic, who's 10-3, and Memphis, who's 11-2.
So let me ask you, why do you think it's a 2-team race? Because you also have Tulane that's 9-3, Tulsa that's 9-3, SMU. Like you have 4 teams that have 9 wins right now. I definitely agree with you that Memphis and Florida Atlantic are the 2 best teams. But I don't want to count anyone out.
Yeah. I think to say that's true. It's no disrespect. I really like Tulane. I saw Tulane play against who did they play against? Bradley in the that surfing tournament in California where Bradley won it.
Yeah.
I really like Tulane. I I don't know. I think Florida Atlantic and Memphis. Memphis is like average age is like 28. But you know what? How we're looking at it, they beat Texas A&M, then lost to Illinois, and then you weren't sure about them. You're like, maybe not. And then they beat Arizona, and then they lose to Florida Gulf Coast by 4 on Saturday.
Florida Atlantic's just so streaky. Like, they've proven they can beat anybody, right? Yeah. Obviously, by beating number 4 team in the country. I think Arizona was number 1 in the country at the time.
4
when they beat them. Well, when they beat them, I think Arizona was 1. Right, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I'm going to give you props here. I mean, you're the one who called out Memphis early in the season, and you stuck with them, right?
I'm still with them. You know who I'm picking?
Man, they're good. That was a good call on your part preseason.
Yeah, and I like them. David Jones, who played at DePaul, St. John's, dude's averaging 21.2. Right now he's the 10th. He's tied for 10th with Vontrell Woolbright from Western Carolina, one of the top 10 scorers in the nation. And then you got who I like is Javon Quinterly, who's just he's averaging like 13 a game. He's just got really good handles. Can really change speeds real well. I think, but the problem with them is they only have one other player in double digits, so that's a little bit concerning. But they beat Virginia. They lost to Ole Miss by 3. They lost to Villanova, beat Arkansas, beat Michigan, beat Missouri. I mean, they're ready to play. They barely beat Vanderbilt by 2, so I'm a little bit worried that they're the type of team that might play down to the level of their opponent.
Yeah, it's so. Who are you going with that conference, and how many teams does that conference get in the tournament?
2 for sure. I think Florida Atlantic and Memphis will go. I'm going to go with Memphis. I think Tulane has a chance. Tulsa might have a chance. I like Tulane. I like Coach Hunter.
Tulsa's 9-0 at home right now.
No.
So they haven't really played a tough schedule, but they haven't lost at home. That's for sure. Right. And I'm with you. I'm going 2 teams. The ones you named. I'm on the Memphis bandwagon. I'm all in. Big Penny fan and love what they're doing there.
Okay. All right, Atlantic. Okay, so we got both with Memphis, both for Vermont. I think it's going to start shaking up here. So Atlantic Sun, and I don't know who you're going to pick, and you don't know who I'm going to pick. We haven't talked about this. Atlantic Sun. So 2 teams I've kind of looked at is Kennesaw State. They're in a 2-game losing streak. Lost to UNC Asheville, who we've had on the podcast, by 9, and Indiana by 13 points. They beat UNC Asheville earlier in the season. Was in the tournament last year, losing to Xavier by 5. Antonio Petaway is the head coach, new because Abdul Rahim went to, I think, USF. So the other team I like, and I kind of just fell upon them, is they beat Charlotte, and I really like who they are. Jalen Blackman, Coach Donnie Jones. I like Stetson. And it's not the cologne. Not the cologne. I didn't like the cologne. That was disgusting. I like the team.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you one thing about Stetson at the beginning of the season, but I like what they're doing. I mean, they're 8-6 right now, which is a little concerning. But
they beat UCF. They lost to Chicago State by 23.
Yeah, they lost to Charlotte by 23. They lost to Chicago State by 23.
But they just beat Charlotte by 4, so that's called progress.
I know. And then you got Jalen Blackman, 24 points a game. Anything can happen, So
who are you picking?
I'm gonna stick with Kennesaw State. I like Stetson on a couple. I'm gonna stick with Kennesaw State. I don't think Stetson has. I don't think they're gonna make a deep run in their conference tournament.
Would you say you like the team better or the cologne better?
I like the team better.
Okay. All right, so you pick Kennesaw State. I pick Stetson. Yep. Whatever. So we got some stuff to argue about, and it'd be curious to see when I post this stuff on social media, see what people's responses are, or comments or whatever. All right, Atlantic 10. All right, you look at George Washington and George Mason. They're both 11-2. They've really not played anyone. George Washington did lose to South Carolina by 22, and lost to UIC. GW just beat Maryland Eastern by 6. George Mason lost to Tennessee by 21. They did have a nice win against Tulane by 3 recently, but last game they beat North Carolina A&T by 25. So you got the other teams that you really need to look at are Dayton, St. Joe's, Duquesne, and then the Bonnies at St. Bonaventure. Dayton was probably the preseason favorite. They got Deron Holmes II, who's probably the greatest recruit ever to sign with Dayton. He's averaging 17 and 7.3. Nate Santos, a guy I like from the Flyers, 12 and 6.9. They beat St. John's. They beat LSU. They beat Cincy. They lost to Northwestern by 5 and Houston by 14. Okay. St. Joe's is 10 and 3. Lost to Charleston. Beat Loyola Maryland by, listen to this, beat Loyola Maryland by 41.
Wow. Beat
Princeton by 4. Beat Villanova by 13. Lost to Kentucky by 8. Love coach Billy Lang. Eric Reynolds II. Rasheer Fleming. Lynn Greer the 3rd, the 2nd, the 4th, and Cameron Brown. So there's your team. Then you got Duquesne, who we've had on the podcast.
Yep.
And St. Bonaventure just beat a tough Akron squad by 1. So Micah Adams-Woods averaging about 14.7 for Coach Mark Schmidt's Bonnies, who, when I got recruited by them years ago, that was rated the worst campus for social life, St. Bonaventure.
St. Bonaventure? I know a couple people who went there.
They picked it up. Who are you going with? For me, while you're thinking about that, it's either Dayton, St. Joe's, or Duquesne for me. I'm going to throw in Duquesne, not because I like Jimmy Clark and Day and Coach Joyce and Coach Gambrot, but I think that team can do something, Duquesne.
So I circled Duquesne.
You did. So did I.
I did, and I'll tell you why.
Oh,
and
God. Here we go.
You know, it's about culture. I know, like they play so well together. And I think that, you know, when you listen to Coach D talk, and you know, I hope he stays there for as long as he wants to and everything, but it's like he's like the team has something they're playing for something, you know. And he has these guys listening to him. He has these guys playing for him. We had Trey and Day on the podcast. Like, they just seem like they're in sync, you know? What I'll give them is this conference is going to be really fun to watch. Like, when we talk about, like, mid-majors versus everybody else, you know, you threw out 3 or 4 names that could win the conference, right? Yeah. And it's like, for sure, like, this conference – If we were going to pick right now as the 2-person selection committee, I would have like 4 teams in this conference going in.
Yep.
4 or 5, right?
Yeah, but it's not a mid-major conference, right? It's kind of a basketball-centric conference.
It's in that middle, but it's like, does the selection committee like look at that because they're not power 5, power 6, you know, type thing? So
you're picking Duquesne, as am I, but you know who I liked, and I covered the Duquesne Bradley game and went to it. I really like Andre Surazov, who that kid can play, and then what's the nickname? Dusan's nickname?
The aircraft carrier.
Yeah, that kid's a ball player, and Trey Williams is a good player too. They've got some good players.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, what's Duquesne, 9-3 or something like that? 10-3.
Lost to Santa Clara, Princeton by 3, and Nebraska. So they've played and they beat Charleston early by 18. That was a really good game.
And here's the thing that I wrote down next to when I circled Duquesne was like they're 9-3 against a really strong schedule, and they didn't even have a full squad. Right now they're moving into conference play like with a full squad, healthy. Like it's, you know, we mentioned after that podcast with Coach D and those guys, like we were like, these guys are just going to get better, and I still believe that, you know.
All right, so we're both on the Dukes of Duquesne. Hopefully they give us some
I didn't think you were going to pick Duquesne. I didn't think you were going to pick them.
It was going to be I'm really liking St. Joe's. I'm really liking St. Joe's.
I thought you were going to pick St. Joe's. I don't
know, man. I just watching Duquesne. If they could just put it together,
yeah.
And I mean, Rozier is a great great point guard, great player. So they've got some good players. All right, so we both picked Duquesne. ACC, baby. You got Clemson's 11-1, Virginia's 10-3, who just lost to Notre Dame by 22, who Notre Dame got spanked by Citadel. I'm not going to talk about Notre Dame. You got UNC, who's 9-3, beat Oklahoma by 12, lost to Kentucky by 4, lost to UConn by 11, beat number 6 at the time, Tennessee, by 8. Then you got Miami of Florida, who's 10-2, lost to Kentucky by 22. You got Wake Forest is 9-3, Syracuse. You know how much I love the Qs, baby. 10-3, and then number 6.
The Qs is on a 5-game winning streak right now. 7-0 at home.
You know what? The problem with the Qs is they always play an interesting schedule. They'll play some really good teams, and then they'll play like Colgate. They'll play, New York State Children of the Poor. They'll play some really interesting teams. No offense.
This is a hard one.
I don't think it's going to be Virginia, and I don't think it's going to be Duke.
I don't think it's going to be Duke.
It's going to be North Carolina or Clemson.
Do you think so? Do you think Clemson has it? Though?
Yes. Yes. When they brought in Joe Girardi III, that just brought another dimension. And I love R.J. Godfrey. I love Chase Hunter. And P.J. Hall is averaging 20.5 a game, is a ball player. And I think Brunell has built this program. It's taken him some time. Came from Wright State. Got to get him on the podcast. But I like how they play. They're 11-1. And, I mean, they really haven't they lost to Memphis by 2. They beat TCU. South Carolina's a great team. Lamont Paris doing a really good job down there. Alabama's kind of been all over the place. But then UNC, baby.
You asked me on our last pod, like, what's a team that surprised me this year, and I brought up UNC. Like, I mean, I think that they could do really well this. Like, this is. There's not one team that stands out in my mind in this conference. There's 5 or 6 of them.
Yep.
I circled UNC and Virginia, and Virginia's defense is so good, and I think that always does really. Defense wins, the second half of the year.
Yep.
And I just don't know if Virginia can win games on the road. And to win this conference, you're going to need to win on the road, right? Virginia's second in the country in points allowed. Like they're only allowing teams 56 points per game. I'm going UNC.
Yeah, me too.
They have experience. Like they've been there.
I don't know, man. R.J. Davis is averaging over 20.
He's so good.
Armando Bacot is averaging just under 15 and like almost 11 rebounds a game. Ingram and
I think Bacot is gonna do. I think he's gonna have an incredible second half of the season.
Yep.
Like he's going into the draft after this season. He's gonna show people like who he is, and I think, ACC is such a basketball historical conference. Yep. Like, I mean, these guys. How do you not walk through UNC's like locker room and just not get inspired? To be like, hey, like we're a top 10 team in the country right now. Like we have the pieces to do really well, and just not. Like go out there and prove people wrong who are doubting you, and they've done that the first half of the season. Yep. So I think they've got the experience and they've got some motivation to do really well the second half of the season. Look out for if Virginia can win on the road, they're going to be tough because they're not.
Lost to Notre Dame by 22.
Yeah, I mean.
So you don't like Clemson?
I need to watch them more. Like that's the thing. It's like I do like Clemson, but I can't picture them winning the ACC this year. I think there's going to be too many. I think Clemson's going to be a team where you're going to start to see them just win games they're supposed to win and lose games they're supposed to lose. I don't think that they're going to upset anybody this second half of the season. Okay. And I think to win the conference, you need to win.
Okay. That's fair enough. All right, let's go to the Big 12. Kansas.
Yeah. Kansas, man, they are.
All I gotta say is Kevin McCullough Jr.
Yeah, I mean, I picked him as a potential player of the year candidate. I think our podcast was one of the only ones who recognized that preseason.
It's pretty much you.
Kudos to me and you.
Yeah, kudos to you.
But Kevin McCullough, Hunter Dickinson, they're both averaging over 18 points per game. That's the first time you've had a Kansas team where two players are averaging over 18 points per game since 1998. Can you name the two players?
Since 1998?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Paul Pierce and Rafe LaFrentz.
That's who I was going to guess.
I know you were. No, it's like you got DeJuan Harris too running the point. I mean, they have every potential piece to win every game, right? It's like I just don't see them going into a game the rest of the year and being an underdog. Yep. Hunter Dickinson just fits in so well at Kansas. He's, I think, second in the country in rebounds per game, putting up 12.5 boards per game. Much better place for him in Lawrence, Kansas than Ann Arbor, and he's got a team that's supporting him. So but talk to me about Houston. Like, is that surprising to you? Or? I
mean, the problem is their best win is Texas A&M. So
yeah,
but here's the thing: they're 13-0. I watched them play against, I think it was Xavier, and I mean they are stifling on defense. They get after it. Now they only have two players averaging double digits: LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp. I really like LJ Cryer. 16.9 points a game. Jamal Sheed is averaging about 9.8. He needs to pick it up a little bit. They're good. I mean, Sampson knows what to do. I mean, he's a great coach, great recruiter.
Defense wins championships, right? Isn't that the saying?
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's going to be kind of a rude awakening for Houston because this is the first time they're in the Big 12. I mean, BYU is doing really well with Coach Mark Pope. I don't know if you remember Mark Pope from Kentucky. 12-1. They beat San Diego State in November. I really like Jackson Robinson for the Cougars. Oklahoma's 12-9. They lost to UNC. Beat then number 25, Providence. Iowa State is still 11-2. Cincinnati's 11-2. Baylor is 10-2. TCU's 10-2. This is going to be a really interesting conference. I think you're going to see a couple upsets per se. I think you're going to see a lot of movement throughout the season. I don't know. I mean, I'm picking Kansas. I mean, I think
you have to pick Kansas. I think. I mean, Houston's like they haven't had the toughest schedule, which I think is kind of on par with Kelvin Sampson, how he likes to build teams throughout the season. But they're the only team in the country holding their opponents to below 50 points a game. The second best D in the country we already talked about is Virginia. They're at 56. So they're 6 points ahead of everybody else in the country in points allowed per game. Can you do that with, the bottom half of the Big 12? Sure. Right. But there, like you said, there's going to be a rude awakening when they start playing some of these away games. In the Big 12, I have Kansas. Kansas should roll through this conference in all honesty, and should end up a number one seed in the tournament.
Yep. All right, let's go to the Big East. You got UConn's 11-2, just lost to Seton Hall by 15 and Kansas by 4. Beat Gonzaga, UNC, Texas, and Indiana. Senior Tristan Newton is just a stud, leads the team in points, rebounds, and assists. And I really like senior guard Cam Spencer. I know you like the Huskies. I know you love Coach Hurley. Then you got Marquette, 11-3, beat Creighton by 5, lost to Providence, crushed Texas by 21, lost to Wisconsin by 11, lost to Purdue by 3, beat Kansas and Illinois. Tyler Kolek is averaging 15.3 points per game and 6.3 assists per game. And then Cam Jones is a stud, 14.6. And Osa Ighodaro, whatever he is, 13 points, 6.7 rebounds. And you have to also watch out for, you think Ed Cooley made a mistake by going to Georgetown because Providence is 11-2.
Who you got?
I got Marquette. Pains me to
say.
Do you
really?
Yeah, I got Marquette. When I saw Shaka Smart sealing the defense on the sideline,
I'm God. Like, how amazing was that?
Oh my God! Why do I always like Marquette coaches? But I'm a DePaul graduate. I love Marquette coaches.
Buzz Williams, Shaka Smart. I mean,
even Tom Crean.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that's part of the hiring process. Like the AD puts them on the floor and it's like, hey, show me your energy. Oh gosh, this is a tough one. I'm going UConn.
I knew you were.
I mean, I'm very surprised with Providence this year. I think that they are a team that will make the tournament. I think that they're going to end up a
They're a team that can almost. They're a team that could lose to Georgetown and DePaul too, or Butler.
I know. But
Any of them
I like Kim English. No, not any of them. Nobody. Yeah, I don't know. It's UConn's not losing to DePaul. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got UConn. Look out for Providence, though. Very impressed with Kim English's team.
Yeah.
What he's done there, and I think that they are going to be a team to look out for. Maybe not this year. They're going to make the tournament this year. They could be a 3 or 4 seed, in my opinion.
Yep.
But Kim English is going to be one of those coaches that is he's going to be a top 5 coach in the next 4 or 5 years.
You think so? And, you know what else you got to look out for too is Kyle Neptune's Villanova Wildcats.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Oof, what do you? So you're not going to Paul?
No. All right. So you picked UConn, and that's a good pick. I picked Marquette. You know,
it's a good pick too.
Yeah, it's a good pick. All right, Big Sky. Really, 2 teams I like. Portland State, they beat Fresno State, got crushed by Eastern Washington recently. They're 10-4, and then Weber State 9-4 beat Wyoming, lost to Nevada, beat Yale, beat St. Mary's by 4, lost to Montana State last year in the conference tournament, and just beat them by 22. I really like Dylan Jones. Leads the team in all 3 categories: scoring, rebounding, and I believe assists. Eric Duff's the coach there, so I'm going to go with Weber State. I think Dylan Jones can just do it himself.
I'm with you. I think that they challenge themselves with their schedule, and I think that they did. Yale's a good team. St. Mary's is a good team. Wyoming's a good team.
Yep.
I mean, they have good as far as like getting a schedule for a member of the Big Sky. They got a tough schedule the first half of the season, and they won some games, which I think is going to prove them very well going into conference play.
Yep, that was simple. So you pretty much just copied me like always. All right, so the one I really struggled with is the Big South. Okay, you're looking at Radford, who's 10-5, lost to UNC, and was really controlling that game for over a half. And then lost to James Madison by 3. So you beat West Virginia by 1. Everybody's beaten West Virginia. Lost to Clemson by 35. Darius Nichols is a coach for the Highlanders, and they're led by Keenan Gills and Daquan Smith. And then you got High Points 11-4. And then UNC Asheville's 8-7. And why am I saying them? Because we've had them on the podcast, and they've had a pretty tough schedule. They lost earlier to Kennesaw State in the year, and they just beat them by 9 points. Just lost to UAB by 5. UAB is a really good team. Drew Pembers is a player. I mean, I'm
going to show some respect to Coach Morrell. I'm going UNC Asheville. I think, you said it. The team, one of their bad losses, they've already avenged it. And I think Appalachian State's a good team that they beat by 13. So, it's one of Morrell's team. I was hoping they'd have a better record by now, right? But I think that it's how you finish the season, and I think he's got these guys where he wants them right now going into conference play.
Yeah, and he was, and they were preseason pick first, weren't they?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
I really want to go with Radford, but part of me is telling me to go with the Bulldogs of UNC Asheville. So I'm going with episode 4's guest, Coach Mike Morrell. I went with this guy, Shaka Smart in his hair. I went with Mike Morrell. So, all right. So we got 2 more conferences to talk about in this episode. Then we're going to go to episode 2 and talk about the other conferences in 2 and 3. The Big Ten. This is the conference that is just probably keeps me up at night with trying to figure it out. You've got Purdue is 12-1. I mean, they've beat Arizona, they've beat Marquette, they've beat Tennessee, Gonzaga, but then they go to Evanston and lose to a pretty darn good Northwestern team by 4. Yep. Nebraska, 11-2, loses to Minnesota by 11, then beats Michigan State by 7. They also lost to Creighton by 29. Bryce Williams and Jawan Gary, who I really like those guys. And then you got Michigan State. 8-5, 0-2 in conference. Illinois is pretty much done. I hate to say that. Terrence Shannon Jr. You don't know if he's going to be back or not. Illinois is a really good team, and they could do something. I still think they can make it to the tournament. But without Shannon, I don't see them winning the Big Ten. Northwestern's 10-2. Indiana's 10-3. They just lost to UConn by 20. And then you got to wonder with Michigan State and Tyson Walker, because he's a ball player. Who do you got? I pretty much am going to say Purdue.
Yeah, so I agree. I think Illinois is done for the season. I don't even think they're going to make the tournament.
Really?
Yeah.
How many bids do you think they'll get, since we're both going with Purdue?
So let's look. So I haven't said I'm going with Purdue. I'm going with Purdue, but I didn't say that yet.
No, I know how you work. I've known you a long ass time.
So here's God. I think Michigan State's going to make a run for it. Like,
they can.
I know, that's my I just don't think Purdue wins tight games at the end of the season. And I think that's what they've always struggled to do. I also think that they are so dependent on Zach Edey, to the point where some of these coaches like Izzo and Woodson and some of these other, like, they're going to figure them out by now. You know, like, I think Purdue's going to be forced. Well, I mean, I think they're going to be forced to kind of change their game up, not to the degree where they're going to be losing a bunch of games, but they're going to be put in some awkward situations just based on the maturity of coaching in this league.
Yeah.
I'm going to. So are we saying who's going to win regular season conference or conference tournament?
Both, just all.
I think Purdue is going to win the regular season conference, and I think Michigan State is going to win the conference tournament.
Wow.
And Indiana surprised me.
Indiana surprised me. I thought they were going to be Kansas. They just let the foot off the gas. But then they lose to UConn by 20. So I think if all those five guys, I love Ware. If those guys five are Renault's really good too. If those five guys are firing, that's a really good Indiana team. And Nebraska too. I didn't like the Minnesota loss by 11 though.
Nebraska, I think, is yeah. I mean, they're on a mission. The mayor, but they're Nebraska. Yeah. Like, I don't see them finishing top 3 or top 4. I think they'll be around that 4, 5, 6 by the time conference is over. Okay. I think they're going to be one of those teams where you're like, do they get in the tournament? Like, how many teams does the Big Ten get in? Mm-hmm. You know, and I think Nebraska has proven themselves so far that they should be in there, right?
Yep.
But they're gonna rack up a few losses in conference play here, and that's gonna be a big question mark towards the end of the season.
Are you predicting Purdue or Michigan State conference champion?
The tournament champion, conference tournament.
Just in general, who's the champion?
I'm gonna go Michigan State.
Oh, damn it! Just ruined my freaking pink. Okay. I knew you were. When push comes to shove, I pushed you to that one. All right, last conference we're going to talk about, then we're going to go to the next episode covering more conferences. The Big West. So I was all about the LBC. Snoop Double D. Warren G. Regulator. Mound up. It's a cool black night. I can't remember the song. So I was all about Long Beach State. They beat USC. I was really excited. Marcus Tazonis, 17.6 points. They beat Michigan by 8. Then they lost to San Diego State by 12. They're 9-5. I also like the Anteaters, and we're not going to talk what an Anteater is, in my opinion. The UNC Irvine's 9-5, lost to New Mexico by 13, lost to San Diego State by 1, lost to Duquesne by 4. Here's the problem. I was going to pick Long Beach State, but they lost by 16 to Cal State, University Northridge, the Matadors. Andy Newman, the Matadors. Who coached the Matadors? Previous guest.
Yeah, we know who it is.
Mark Gottfried.
Yep.
They're 11-3, beat UCLA, lost to Stanford by 9 their first game, And like I said, they crushed the Beach, Long Beach State, the Beach, by 16. Deshaun Ellen Atkins averaging 19.4 for the Matadors. I'm going with Cal State Northridge.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, if they didn't beat up on Long Beach State, I'm going Long Beach State. We can move on. I think that they have enough good wins where, and I also think that losing to Cal State Northridge
by 16
this early in the season
by 16.
Right? That's not a whole lot. Like when you looked at like the
16 is a lot. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, it could have been a lot better too.
That's a lot. That's 8 baskets. That's 8 2-point baskets.
Yeah.
That's 5 threes and a free throw.
Wow. putting that master's degree to work.
Oh yeah, DePaul. There you go.
Yeah, I'm going Long Beach State. I think they're a tough team.
Okay, they are a tough team.
I don't mind the fact that they lost to Cal State and Northridge this early in the season because I think that they will have something to play for.
Well, I like it. All right, so that's the first part of our 3-part conference predictions. I thought that was pretty good. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. As Sammy says, pass the rock. Pass this to all your hoop friends. Baby. I'll be curious to see what people's opinions are. You can always leave a 5-star review and put some comments in there if you want to ask us some questions and stuff like that. I've seen that with other podcasts. And we'll be back with part 2.
Part 2 of 3? Are we doing 2 of 3?
Yep, 2 of 3. Or no. Cool. This is 1 of 3. Now we got 2 of 3. All right.
This is 1 of 3. We're going 2 of 3.
All right. Let's stop this bad boy. Here we go.